All eyes on the Marlins, even in mid-September. Well, all eyes might be on the Marlins, but it's actually the Dodgers and Shohei Otani that people may be watching, going for 50-50 in this series against the Marlins. Does he get it? Tons to get into. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Not for too much longer, final 2 weeks for me, but hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This is your team every day, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder, there's a YouTube channel. Hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Let me know in the comments. Does Shohei get 50-50 this series? If you are watching as well, you will see I have a guest. There are guests every day. No doubt about it. And we are rolling out the big guns. Marlins Radio. Kyle Sielaff in the house. Kyle, how we doing, brother?
I'm good, Peter. It's great to be back on with you. I don't remember the last time I joined you. Wasn't it like when we were out in Oakland at the Arise trade? I think I remember sitting in my hotel room in San Francisco, I think, chatting with you. So it's been, 4 months now, man? Too long.
Crazy. 100%. I was just thinking that the last time we did speak was the Arise deal. And I was like, man, that was early May. Like, where's the time gone? Where has the time gone, Kyle? Nevertheless, and I mean, listen, we're at the back end of this season now. There's tons to get into here, and there's a long agenda to get into, but where has the time gone? And I mean, what a wild season as well for the Marlins, in not quite the way we expected, but it's still been wild to follow along, no doubt. What's been your experience?
It has been a wild season. It's funny because I was thinking about this. I don't remember if it was this morning or last night on the plane. It's amazing the narrative that a season can take, where obviously coming out of last season, there was high expectations, and understandably so, getting back to the postseason. And then it just didn't start the way that anybody wanted it to. And you go from the highs of the highs to the disappointment of realizing fairly quickly that this team is not going to the postseason in 2024. But then the narrative, man, like once you get through the trades and the trade deadline and all of the moves and all the transactions made, it just feels to me like the Marlins have started to see some of the daylight and the other side of the forest a lot longer than, I'll be honest with you, Peter, than I expected. Because when you do trade a bunch of players, it's not easy to immediately just start what, I would say is infusing talent into your system. Obviously, that was the team's objective with trading some really, really good players, which is never easy to do. But I would say for me personally, and as a fan, you go from the extreme exuberation of the playoffs to quick disappointment, starting 0-9 or 0-10, and trading a rise and trading all these players. But like now on the other side of it, I can't tell you how much I look forward to going to the ballpark every day. And I think a lot of other fans do now as well. And I understand their frustration, but to now see Xavier Edwards and Conor Norby, and to see Kyle Stowers, and see Griffin Conine as well, but to see young players, and then for me, and you don't know what's going to happen in the offseason, but to think about Sandy and a Luzardo and a Cabrera, Rogers, or not Rogers, I'm sorry, but Weathers and Garrett, as I meant to say, that's exciting to me. And who knows what the offseason is going to bring? They may very well trade some of those guys, but the baseball season is really long, and it is so darn evident by what's transpired this season.
Yeah, no doubt. One thing that stands out to me for 2024, and the story was written by a British player, actually, the 70th player used by the Marlins last week, a British guy, which, made me feel, connects me, which is great. But from a broadcasting perspective, and for someone that has to talk about the team daily, covering what's happening, but equally do their research in advance of these games, doing all your homework, all the prep, for that little nugget that you might need, that you may never need, how difficult has it been to cover specifically the 2024 Marlins bullpen?
Well, the bullpen is in particular. It's been such a rotating cast of characters. It's been crazy, man. I mean, there's so many pitchers being used this season. I don't know if you have any familiarity with Michael Peterson. I see he was born in Middlesex. How far is that from you?
That is 200 miles, I would say, somewhere in that kind of range distance, 200 to 250 miles. So, I mean, in US terms, I mean, that's like nothing. But like it's 4 hours. Like let's just call it 4 hours straight, somewhere like that. Probably 5 hours if you go at the wrong time, and 7 hours if you really go at the wrong time.
Oh man. Anyway, sorry, I've already gotten off the beaten path on you, but it was funny because you see the 70th player. He was wearing number 70, born in England. The bullpen has been crazy. What I've been most impressed by there's been an extended stretch, and it feels like. Let me actually take that back. It feels like more often than not this season, it doesn't matter like the name on the back. It's been the name on the front. And for in large part, they just continue to get outs and they continue to keep the team in the game. And when you're using 35, 40 different pitchers, and oh my gosh, the bullpen, I don't think there's anybody left right now besides Declan Cronin, I guess, right? I guess he'd be the lone holdover due to injuries and trades or whatever. I mean, the bullpen is incredible. Just the amount of guys that we've seen come in and out of there. But you know what? In large part, they've done a really nice job. And I look at a Jesus Tinoco and some of these guys that were just guys. They were just floating around looking for jobs. And Mike Baumann has shown that he's got some stuff. Obviously, he's got to cut down on the walks, and we don't have to go into every single player. But back to your original question, it can be difficult at times to make sure that my job and the one thing that I want to do is accurately depict these players for the fans. So that's where I wouldn't say that's difficult, but you just want to make sure that your research is done, man. You want to know, you want to Google their names and find as many articles about them just to know them and maybe know a bit of their story. I mean, I guess if there's anything difficult about it is sometimes guys that are relatively nameless that haven't gotten these opportunities, there might not be much on them. But obviously that's when you go to the ballpark for every day to try to get a little information. So, it's storytelling. You're trying to humanize these guys and share their stories with the fans and, maybe what makes them tick a little bit, and then obviously the baseball side of it. But I would not say it's difficult. I also wouldn't say it's fun because, it's not fun watching what's transpiring, but it is cool to see a lot of new guys and watch them get opportunities in the major leagues.
Yeah, no doubt. And Tinoco in particular is one that truly stands out, I think, in terms of the production aspect where, just a guy next thing is, he's effectively the closer at this point. And he's doing a great job with it. So fair play to Tinoco, and everyone's fighting for jobs. Tinoco's put his best foot forward and looks like he could be a part of the pen in 25. So really interesting. And to this point, you go to the ballpark, right? You're trying to understand a little bit more about these guys, what makes them tick, some of their stories, etc. Who's been maybe the most exuberant personality from these bullpen guys, these relievers? They're different. They're a different breed, I think, is the way it's been described to me. Who's kind of stood out to you, personality-wise, of an exuberant dude, maybe?
That's a good question. And I'm not even going to pretend I'm going to make up a name. I'm actually going to pull up FanGraphs here and look at our bullpen currently. Okay. There's immediately a name that rings out to me. Lake Bacher. University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, went to a Division III college to be the punter and kicker for the football team. And then a couple of years into college, he just started playing baseball again. I think I said it on the air the other day. Could you imagine being that good at something where you just, I'll give it a shot? Or I think when I was working with Scott Kornberg last week in Pittsburgh, I think Paul Skeens might have had a similar story that he really had to be pushed to play baseball, and he ended up showing at his high school tryout or something in a pair of jeans. And I'm thinking, how good must you be? How gifted are some of these guys? But Lake Bacher, are you kidding me? I don't know if you know, Peter, but the University of Wisconsin Whitewater over here, there's Division I, II, and III universities, whatever. D1 is the best. Division III, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater has one of the best Division III college football programs ever. They've won 6 or 7 national championships, and obviously Lake was going to kick and punt. But just to pick up baseball, pretty incredible, and now he's getting an opportunity. He's been fun to watch.
I've got to be honest. He stood out to me, particularly on first time you see him trot out there onto the mound. I'm like, okay, I can get behind this dude. He's got the long flowing hair, he's got the tash. I'm just thinking, okay, Lake as a first name. I'm there sitting thinking, how do we pronounce this surname? Is it Bashar? Every Marlins reliever seems to have a challenging pronunciation of a surname as well. It's caught me off guard multiple times, and Bashar, Barker, man, oh man, it's been a fun year getting to know these guys, no doubt about it. So let's hit the first ad. I want to talk about this Dodgers series on deck as well, because it is a big story, and it's going to be a big story this week because of one particular guy coming into Miami that's looking to do some damage. I'm going to see if he can do so. I'm going to briefly touch on him, and then also want to get your sense of 2024 standouts, whether it's moments, players, things that just you'll reflect on, remember from 24. You're close to the team. You're there every day. So Kyle Sielaff has loads of nuggets that I know we need to tease out for the listeners here. So before we do that, let's firstly let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. I mean, Evan should be absolutely nailing it up on FanDuel right now with the NFL season back. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on Locked On Marlins. It is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime you want. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins with me, Peter Pratt, and Marlins Radio's Kyle Sielaff. We need to talk about the Dodgers series that's just about to commence tomorrow. This is the off day. It's being recorded on Monday and going out to you on Monday. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us on your off day as well. So tip my cap to you, sir. The Dodgers coming in, 3-game series. The Marlins are looking, I think, hopefully to prevent Shohei Otani from getting to a serious landmark of 50-50. The Jazz Chisholm, junior tracker at 40-40 has been tracking along all the way. He's not going to get there, I don't think. But Shohei Otani's 50-50 is in play. How much anticipation is there going to be in the ballpark, do you think? And how many bumps on seats are we going to see for this series?
I would imagine there's going to be an uptick, and I'll be very curious to see if he gets the 48 tonight in Atlanta, because obviously he's generational, he's incredible, he'll be a Hall of Famer. It's just not easy to hit 3 homers in a series. If there's anybody that can do it, he can. But I do think if he goes deep against the Braves tonight in Atlanta and he comes to Miami 2 shy in each department, I do imagine that there's going to be an uptick in folks there to potentially witness history. I mean, the guy is, I don't even know if there's any superlatives to really say, but, he's one of those guys, Peter, when you show up at the ballpark, I remember when we were out in Los Angeles earlier in the season, shortly after I had just talked to you, he just kind of captivates you. It's like, whoa, who is that? Obviously, there's so much media attention around him with the Japanese media and the intrigue that he kind of just harkens, I guess. I mean, there's so much intrigue with the man, and we've gotten to know a little bit about him. And I remember when he got his MVP last offseason, the world went crazy because he showed his dog for the first time. I was like, what? But people are so intrigued by the man, and now he's on the doorstep of Major League history, and people just crave Ohtani, and they want to know more. And then obviously on the field, whenever he hits the ball, it sounds different. The way he can run, he just glides around the bases. It's incredible to watch. He is a freak of nature. And he's going to have a darn good chance to get there. Obviously, the Marlins will do their best to keep him at bay. Really, nobody's been able to do that if you obviously look at the season that he's had. But, yeah, if he's got a serious chance, I do imagine you're going to see an influx of fans of the game, and maybe even, I don't know, but maybe even Japanese folks in that contingency would fly over stateside to potentially see it. I remember chatting with and I'll tell you a quick story real quick from last year when we were out in Los Angeles. I was chatting with the Angels broadcasters, and they said that the folks of Japan are so infatuated with Ohtani and they love him so much, they would buy plane tickets to LAX and they would put on the plane empty suitcases, because when they got there, they would go to the ballpark and every single day the Angels were just selling out of anything Ohtani related in their inventory. That's like the type of impact that he has. If there was balls, pens, pencils, jerseys, shorts, T-shirts, hats, anything with his name, his likeness, his image, they were just selling out every day. It's just like the legend of Ohtani is insane. And yeah, he's going to have a chance to make history here the next couple of days.
Best baseball player ever?
I think he needs to continue to do it. But if he does, yes, I don't know but what there will be a debate the other way. I mean, obviously there's some incredible players that have ever played the game, but if he comes back from Tommy John and he makes 20 to 25 starts and has a 3.5 ERA, and let's say he takes a little step back and goes 40-40 and drives in 100, and he does that for the next 8-9 years or whatever his deal is after this, I don't really know how you could argue for somebody else to be the greatest player ever if he continues at this pace. I mean, he's going to push, numbers we've never seen before, quite literally stuff that nobody's ever done in the game. So yeah, I do think he's got to keep doing it. But if we check back and we do this again about 8-9 years from now, and that guy has stayed healthy and he's got 400 or 500 homers and 150, 200 starts in the big, I think yes.
I'm with you, by the way. I think he's on the pathway, to that situation. So we'll monitor that closely. I'm looking forward to that episode in about 8 years' time. Actually, we'll see how we're looking. I'm sure we'll look pretty similar. To be honest with you, we age well and gracefully.
You'll look similar. I'm not aging like a fine wine, Peter. I saw you were tipping that wine glass back. I'm not aging as gracefully as you are, my friend.
Well, happy birthday, by the way, for the other day. So I just want to call that out on air.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So just the one final note on this one. I've got to be honest, I was looking at the probable starters here for the Marlins again for this series, and I was thinking, okay, this looks intriguing. The one that stood out to me was Game 3. I don't even know why I'm laughing, because it's unfair to laugh, but when I've been watching Veyente Beozo, particularly his first batch of starts, I must say the profile has changed recently, but those first handful of starts, it was effective, i.e. the ERA was low and didn't give up a ton of runs, but man, oh man, he flirted with the warning track consistently. There were so many fly ball outs for Beozo. I must say it has slightly changed, but I've got to be honest, if it's Beozo versus Ohtani and he's on 49, I strongly encourage anyone to get themselves down to Lone Depot. It's a high probability you may see history on that day in particular. So that's going to be a very intriguing matchup for me. Beozo, Ohtani. He is a specialist fly ball warning track out guy. I feel like Ohtani may have enough power to get him out, but could be a fun one though, right? If it goes down to that game in particular.
That guy's been a magician. I mean, Skip Schumacher has called him as much. He even said, this is Skip Schumacher. He's the manager of one of 30 major league teams, and he has won a World Series, and he knows this game better than anybody. And he said last week, he said something to the effect of he is a magician. I don't really know how he does it, but he keeps doing it. So who knows, Peter?
Yeah, who knows exactly? Should be fun. And Miguel Rojas to be back in town as well, I guess. So be good to see Miggy Rowe, El Capitan, obviously long tenured Marlins. So Miggy Rowe back in town, and the Dodgers. It's tied up the top, I guess, with the Phils. So they're kind of battling away for the number 1 seed. So there's like some skin in the game here for the Dodgers. Like, although the Marlins aren't involved directly, they've got the Braves coming at the back end of the week as well. So there's a lot of teams with a lot of skin in the game. And the Marlins, a young group, happy to play spoiler. It could be some fun little stories here for the Marlins.
Well, there's no doubt about that. It's a great opportunity for young kids that have never experienced maybe a kind of, I don't know if you call it like a high pressure situation. I think they're always high pressure in the major leagues. There's always people watching you, but you can get to a place where for the other team it's playoff baseball, and you have to match that intensity. And that's a very, very great opportunity for young players that are just getting their feet wet in the major leagues. I mean, the Dodgers, I think going into their game tonight, 3.5 up on the Padres, right? So, not the National League West is not wrapped up, regardless of what happens in Atlanta tonight. They have got to win in Miami, and the Marlins are going to have an opportunity. The Dodgers are going to the playoffs, but they may not win the division if they go ice cold down the stretch. You look ahead to this weekend against Atlanta. If Atlanta comes in here and lays an egg, and the Marlins put their best foot forward and beat them a couple of times, and the Mets have a decent week in New York, they might be going into the final week. The Atlanta Braves could potentially, if things went really wrong, may go into the final week of the regular season, 2 games, a game and a half, maybe 2 out of that third and final wild card, chasing their in-division rivals. I say all that because these games matter for the Marlins. And it is kind of funny to laugh about Valente Belloso, maybe, going opposite of the Dodgers, but if he continues to do what he's been doing and just seemingly getting outs for 6 innings and giving them a chance to win, and the Marlins find a way to, maybe put together a winning homestand in their final 6 games of the season, they really could put a dent in have their own little slice of the pie here in the potential playoff picture. So these games do mean something. You don't play this long to throw in the towel now. And I think even more so. I have said this on the air recently, and nobody needs to hear this from me because everybody's just knows it. You've got guys like Xavier Edwards and Javier Sanoja and Conor Norby and Kyle Stowers and Otto Lopez and Jake Berger to an extent. Jesus Sanchez, who's, obviously one of the more veteran-laden players on the team, but he's got his own deficiencies that he's continuing to work on. He's trying to learn how to hit lefties to prove to this organization he's an everyday big leaguer. These games mean something for these guys. So, if the front office were to get the sense in the final 2 weeks that they felt like a young player was checked out, that's going up against their ledger moving forward. You don't do that, and they know that. And I'll tell you who's not going to allow that to happen is Skip Schumacher. For 2 seasons now, I mean, he is nobody shows up to the ballpark more convinced every day that this team's going to win than Skip, regardless of the record. And I can't tell you how just incredible to me of a trait that I think that is. That
Agreed.
And I'll be honest with you. I saw him in the elevator the other day, Peter, and I said, you ready for the off season? And I meant more so just get back with the family and stuff. And he said, it was just him and I in the elevator in Pittsburgh. And this is no BS. It's a true story. He said, Kyle, I will never allow myself to think about that until the final day in Toronto, because I'm getting paid to put this organization in a place where they have an opportunity to win every single day. And that's my job. Regardless of our record right now, my job is to win every single day. He will not allow himself to think about tomorrow. He will not allow himself to think about the first day of the offseason back home and with his beautiful family in California. He's not wired that way. Until the buzzer sounds, he is going to go to the ballpark every day and make those guys get out there and take their infield and outfield work and occasionally do their PFPs. And his expectation is that you're going to work today like it's game 4, 144 or 124. And you know what? If you choose not to, that's going to be an indictment on you and probably with the organization and how they view you moving forward. So I'm rambling, but I just give Skip so much credit for all this and the importance of these games really down the stretch for a lot of these guys.
Thank you for that story, though, Carl, because that exactly aligns to my expectations and what, from multiple thousand miles away. I've never spoken to Skip before. But just my read of him is exactly what you've described. And who knows what happens in the offseason, but if it is to be his final year with the Marlins, it will be a sizable loss for the organization. But Skip has been phenomenal, in my opinion. And I said it to Steven Strom the other day. I just said he's been more impressive this year than last year, in my opinion. It's easy when the team's riding high and you're in a shopping cart being pushed around with champagne being sprayed everywhere. I mean, it's easy. But, when you've got no rotation and you come out the block stone cold, that's when the true grit shows up, I think. And it's like, the expectations. Skip has never wavered once. Not once from what I've seen. And so super encouraging and such an incredible dude. So thank you for sharing that. Yep. Let's hit the final ad. And then I just wanted to, there's other nuggets in Kyle Sielaff's brain that need to be shared. So I'll let you ponder on a standout moment, a few, could be the smallest thing. I don't know. Something you think that's worth sharing. People won't know, won't have seen, whatever it might be. I'll let you think on that for a second. Before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. We got the graphics on already. The producer is doing well. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's you against the numbers. No sharks. You don't have to worry about them sharks. Just you against the numbers. All you do, pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. That includes up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And it's the best way to get in on the sports action in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So simply download PrizePicks today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So PrizePicks, run your game. Final segment here on Locked On Marlins and me, Peter Pratt, and Kyle Sielaff. Kyle, I'm really pleased you shared that story about Skip Schumacher and also the thing you called out there about the players right now. There's some juice for these series, and I think it's a really good call out that in a lost season, so to speak, in the, they're 40 games under, so it's lost in that aspect. But there's some juice now. There's some pressure. It's going to be interesting to see the young group and how they respond to effectively playoff baseball, albeit it's the other teams that are, in the playoff hunt or in the playoffs, so to speak. So great call out. I'm interested to see, who and how it goes. It would be so baseball if the Marlins win both these series this week. It would be just totally Marlins baseball if they spank the Dodgers. I mean, hell, they sweep the Dodgers and sweep the... let's just go 6-0. Come on, let's have it. Kyle, talk to me about 24. Other things when you reflect back, other little moments that you can think of, joy, surprise, whatever it might be. What have you got for us?
Okay, the first one that would come to mind for me was Jake Burger's walk-off homer against the White Sox. And not just because it was against his old team, but I thought about that guy years ago who just tore both Achilles and, we don't need to get too deep into this, but he's been very outspoken about mental health and his journey and the dark times after doing that. And, I thought that was an amazing moment for a guy. I don't know if I just read too much into it or if it was a full circle moment, but to see him do that against his old team, one that there were so many trials and tribulations, but finally got the opportunity. Then he's traded to the Marlins and, he had his own way of putting the Marlins on his back last season to carry this team to the postseason, along with so many other heroic performances. Jake Burger immediately comes to mind with so many players. I know we've seen first career wins in saves. Edwards in Milwaukee. How do you go 30 years without a cycle and you've got 2 in 2 consecutive seasons, right? And that's his only homer of the year. Are you kidding me? So in one day, in his only homer of the year, he doubles, triples, homers, and singles. That's totally baseball, right? That's so baseball.
That is.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Just maybe.
Let me ask you about Burger briefly. Just while you think about, because I know what'll happen. the cogs will get turning as they do, because that's what happens to me on this show. But let me just ask you about Berger briefly, because it's someone that it's intrigued me, and from afar, because like you called it out earlier, he is effectively the elder statesman now in this clubhouse. I know by Major League service time, he probably isn't just, but nevertheless, the guys that he was traded and acquired, and the team around him then have all effectively been moved on subsequently. He's now the vet in that clubhouse. Like, what kind of role has Jake Berger been playing this year off the field? I mean, we've seen on the field, and boy, oh boy, when he was hot, he was, one of the best hitters in the game for a prolonged period. But, off the field, clubhouse vibes, what's Jake Berger meant for the Marlins this year?
Leadership. I don't know. Yeah, leadership. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to listen to Steven and I's episode with Jake last week, and we dove into it. We didn't really want to shy away. We don't get a ton of opportunity to chat with Jake. I'm sure he'd be willing to do it every day, because he's such an amazing guy. But it was our first time all season long. We had him behind closed doors, Steven, myself, and Jake just sitting there just BSing for a half hour or so. And we asked him about the trials and tribulations of this season and how much it stinks, and how do you take good out of this, et cetera, what he's done personally. And does he see, these young kids? Does he see something? I don't know if you want to call it special, but does he see the future here now? And the answer was yes. But the other thing that he said was, it was not long ago that him, Sandy Alcantara, and Jesus Luzardo sat down and they made a pact that this would never happen again. Mm-hmm. They said this is not happening again. And look, Peter Bendix has a job to do, and obviously his job is to put this organization and give it a chance every year to win. So who knows what happened? Not all these guys will be here forever, and I understand that. But to hear that from Jake, I thought was maybe a little powerful, right? Like, these guys are human, man. Like, they know that this season has stunk. There's literally no two ways to slice it and dice it. When you are on the verge of losing 100 games, it's disappointing for everybody. And those guys have emotions. They have pride. Yeah. They get embarrassed by losing this many games and being 1-5 on a road trip through Pittsburgh. And where did we just come from? DC. No disrespect to those teams, but like, as a professional athlete, you want to win every single night. So this has hurt them. It has hurt Jake Berger, a guy that's been here for a little over a year now. And he is one of the older guys. And, whether it happens or not, I don't know. But to hear him stick his neck out there and be a little vulnerable and tell Steven and I that, I sat down with Sandy and Luzardo, and as leaders of this team, we said, we're not going to let this happen again. I don't know how you do that. I'm not in that clubhouse, but that means something, man. Like that's a guy that really cares. He said he's going to take 2 days off, and he's expecting his next baby. But within a week, he's going to be in the batting cage or taking ground balls, I think he said, because he cares about this. And that's awesome. And to me, when you have guys like Jake Berger and Jesus Luzardo and Sandy Alcantara, who are very prideful men, who are very, very good at what they do, when they take that attitude, and when young players watch the work ethic of Sandy Alcantara and the way that Jesus Luzardo pitches during games, and the leadership skills that Jake Berger now seemingly possesses, young kids are going to follow that. And they're not just going to follow that, but they're going to fall in line, and they're going to start to act that way because they see success. They see what it takes to make money. That's what this game's all about, right? Find a way to feed your family. See how long you can do this for. So, the Berger thing, I really liked hearing that. And he said, we're not going to let this happen in a way that was almost a guarantee. Does it happen? Who knows, man? Who knows? Because there's only so much that they can control. But to know that that's the attitude that they're going to take, that the day this season ends, and he said it's going to be important to stay in touch as a group during the offseason. Of course, people will come and go. The roster's not going to look the same, but they're not unaware. They're very, very aware of what's transpired this season. It hurts them as much as it hurts the fans and all of us that care about the team. So I really enjoyed hearing that, and that's what excites me for years moving forward, is knowing that these players and how much they really care about this thing, man.
Yeah, agreed. What about there's so many young guys now, so many young guys that are now on the roster, trying to make their way. Some of them have progressed through naturally. Like a Norby is a great example. He expected to be a big leaguer. He expects to be a big leaguer for a long time, potentially. I mean, I've not heard him say that. I'm just assuming. So, but nevertheless, there's the guys that I think, are young and they expect to be part of this organization for some period. Who's of the young, I'm going to call it the young core. Who's kind of driving things with the young core? Who's kind of like, the leader of the young group? Because there will be, like, you'll be, young guys will, like, there will be a leader of the pack, because that's just how it works. You'll have an alpha or two, right? So what have you seen in that kind of young group? Griff's in there, Xavier, Norby, Stout, there's tons of guys, but who's kind of ascending in those kind of roles at this point?
I think it's Norby. I really do. He's got an edge to him. There's something a little bit different about him. When Steven and I actually had an opportunity to interview him when he was with AAA Jacksonville following the trade, and I'll tell you in a moment why I'm telling you this story. You could tell that there was a sense of being agitated that he was there because he felt like he was good enough to be in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you something, Peter. You need a lot more guys like that. You want guys to not be content down there, to know that if you bring me up, I'm not going back, because I'm going to show you, as soon as you give me my first opportunity, it's over. It's over. And whoever's position I take, good luck. Find somewhere else to play, because that's the attitude you want these guys to have, man. And Conor Norby has that. Yeah. And he told us, he goes, I'll die on the hill that I'm an everyday second baseman. He probably is, but he's handled himself extremely well at third. But again, he takes the attitude that I really do think if they went to him and said, you know what, you're going to second base, it's over. He's not giving it up. That's his job. For as long as he's a Miami Marlin, nobody else is taking that position. But that's the attitude you want. He strikes me as the guy in the middle of July. If he gets plunked on the back, he's going to point out towards the pitcher when it's the dog days of summer and get the boys going, right? Like, he's not afraid to mix it up. He's got an edge to him. He's more than happy to say hi to you, but he doesn't care if he does or not, because he's there to play baseball. And this organization needs a ton of those guys that have a little FU to them, to put it very nicely, because the best teams have that. And whether they're young or old players, it's like, boy, oh boy, you don't want to face them. You never want to play them, because you always feel like you're going to lose, because they're talented and they're hungry and they're nasty and they just don't care. They don't back down from anybody. And there's so much, like, the healthy competition that I think that they're creating here is really cool. But you want a bunch of guys like that are just nasty, man. It's just, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it better than anybody here, and just let them know that, because nobody's taking my job. And if you let me go play second, then it's over for Otto Lopez, and he can find somewhere else to play, because I'm not giving it up. But that's the attitude, man. That's the attitude that you need. That is awesome. And you get enough of that stuff, that once it gets rolling downhill, man, that's you got something special. And I think that's ultimately what Peter's looking to do, and I think he's going to be successful at doing that. I think it's going to take some time, but I think, and I at least I personally agree with the type of player that he's looking for. Those guys with an edge, man, with something to prove. You get enough of those guys, you can win a lot of games.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely been a lot of feedback around that with Conor Norby. I know we're running a touch long here now, so we better wrap it up. We didn't even get through the full rundown, which is to be expected.
I'm sorry.
We love a segue. No. It's commonly known that Pete Pratt will run long and not cover the items he says he's going to cover. That's Locked On Marlins. That's why people love the show. They just don't know what it's going to be. You can have a rundown, but we won't even talk about it. Doesn't matter. So I've got one final one. I'm asking everyone this question in the final couple of weeks I'm hosting the show. Look into the crystal ball. Tell me the next year the Marlins make the postseason. What year is that going to be? Gut feel for you.
It's a good question. I really hadn't thought about that. Depends on, I don't think it's too outrageous to say next season, depending on what they do this offseason. If they feel like they need, but if they now, but there's a caveat to that. if they choose not to trade any top end starting pitching
Mm-hmm.
and they stay healthy, a lot would have to fall into place. And you would need the Conor Norbys and Kyle Stowers and Xavier Edwards, and who knows if it's an Otto Lopez. You need all those guys to take ginormous steps forward, and you need good health. And I do think it would require very little in the way of trading top end talent, which they may not do. They may do. And if they do, who knows what they fetch for some of these guys. If the market is tantalizing as it was for contenders this summer, then you could easily say, well, there's no reason why this pitching staff couldn't keep this team in a position to be extremely competitive next September and maybe knock on the door. Now, if they do choose to trade some starting pitching, then I would kick that can down the road. But that's the nature of the business. I mean, if they feel like if they trade one or two of these guys and they want to see young guys come up and really, really make 15, 20, 25 starts and go through some trials and tribulations. Again, I would have to push that timeline down the road. But I'll say this, because it's hard to make those predictions and sometimes they're silly, but it's fun to chat about. There's no reason at all, depending on what they do this winter, that the Marlins are not seen as a very competitive team next year, especially when you consider that the foundation is their starting pitching. I mean, with Sandy Alcantara, Jesus Luzardo, Braxton Garrett, Ryan Weathers is a huge disappointment for me because I wanted to see him pitch all year. My God, he was fun to watch when he was healthy. What a freak injury. We haven't seen him in months. I hope we see him for a start or two down the stretch. Yeah. He was incredible. And I don't know if it's going to last, Peter, but Edward Cabrera seemingly has started to grow up a little bit.
Let's go.
I mean, Skip Schumacher has said time and time again, and this is not BS, the kid has some of the best stuff he's ever seen, and he might have the best stuff on this staff. I don't know if maybe my eyes are deceiving me, but it feels like that's starting to come to fruition a little bit. And that's a scary proposition when you consider an Alcantara, a Luzardo, a Garrett, a Cabrera. You've got 4 or 5 different options as a fifth starter. And, oh, by the way, if everything goes according to plan, you've got Yuri Perez coming back around the All-Star break next summer. Who knows if that's what happens? But that is why I can definitively say, and depending on what they do this winter, there's no reason at all this team should not be extremely competitive in 2025.
Love that. But and by the way, someone put a tweet up the other day which caught me off guard, heavily off guard, because it wasn't the opening day lineup, but it was close to the opening day lineup of 2023. And it then caught me off guard, just maybe some of the struggles that were on that roster, like that were plainly obvious on opening day. But that team, they pitched out of their minds. They kept competitive. They added to it. Berger and Bell came in and gave them the boost in it. And that was a playoff roster. And honestly, you go back to opening weekend and look at that roster, that offense, and you're like, how did that happen? But it can. And so I'm with you, Kyle. And the unknown at this point is what happens in terms of activity. Clearly, things change if 1 or 2 of the guys are moved and they maybe prioritize some younger guys and continue to stock the farm.
I would say this too, Peter. Sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to make one thing very clear too. I don't really do this for any other reason to say, I've had a fortunate opportunity to be with the organization since 2013. I cannot remember a time where I felt like there was so much real depth in the system ready and on the doorstep. That's really the heartbeat of an organization. If you do suffer critical injuries to 2 or 3 different guys, do you have guys that are ready to come up and play in the major leagues? If you don't, you're done. Yeah. Okay, you're done. You're not going to win if you don't have that. It feels like in less than 1 year's time, Peter Bendix and his staff have put this organization in a position where they've overturned half of their top 30, and the talent seems real, man. And let's say half of those 15 guys become big leaguers and 2 or 3 of them become studs. Dude, they have a chance. If you don't have that, though, in the minor leagues, you have no chance to win in the big leagues. Let's call a spade a spade. If you start to lose guys due to injury and you just have guys coming up to fill roster spots, you're done.
Yeah.
You can look down the road. It doesn't feel that way now, man. To me, I'm just as excited to see what those AA and AAA rosters look like to start next season as I am the big leagues. And you follow the best teams in baseball. Follow the Dodgers of the last 10 to 15 years and the Atlanta Braves in the last 6 or 7 years. Every single time, who was it a couple of years ago who got hurt for the Braves? And we were there on that Sunday afternoon that Michael Harris II made his debut. The pain of whoever it was, maybe it was Acuna, whoever it was that got hurt, it was immediately like, but holy cow, here comes a top 50 prospect in baseball.
Yeah.
Who is it, right? But that's what the Marlins have an opportunity to do, whether it's a De Los Santos. I know they're worried about Augustin Ramirez's ability to catch, but if he can figure that out, apparently the bat's ready to play at the big league level. There are guys that are on the verge of being ready for the major leagues. That's what should excite fans as well.
Perfect way to end it. Perfect way to end it. I had on the actual rundown for those that are watching, there was pumped for 25. And I didn't need to ask the question. Kyle's answered it already without it being asked. That's how connected me and Kyle are. That's how in tune we are. I don't even have to ask the questions now. He just knows how to answer them, which is perfect. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. This is our last dance on this show, but I appreciate all of the appearances you've made and will always appreciate your insight and friendship as well, buddy. So appreciate you. Appreciate everyone for joining Locked On Marlins. We are back tomorrow. We're continuing to roll out the guests, of course, guys. So stay tuned. See who's up next. There is going to be tons this week. We'll see you tomorrow.